Now, is it just me, or is the Labor Party starting to make some of the same mistakes that it did going into the last election? None more so than showing the hubris of just assuming it's going to happen, finally this time. Remember this posed image where, of course, Chris Bowen backed it out on Twitter suggesting, we're ready? Well, of course, the bloke sitting down wasn't the leader. He wasn't even the shadow treasurer at that point in time. But Jim Chalmers is the man who was, of course, in the box seat to be the money man should each way Albo end up being the Prime Minister. Now, both ways Bill and Penny Wong and Tanya Plibersek and Chris Bowen, well, they'd all still be there. But remember the hubris that this was the team that was going to take us from 2019 deep into the 22nd century, because that's how amazing Labor can be. Well, they have the same feeling again because of something that was said today. I'll get to that in a second. But, of course, the polls are 53, 47. You've seen this over and over again. You've got the media just saying things like this, regardless of the fact that the lady was, of course, blind and didn't know who was sitting next to her.
Well, moving to Melbourne this morning, where PM Scott Morrison was at an RSL having a feed, as you do, and I think this woman had absolutely no idea, or did she? She's pulling up a seat. It's the Prime Minister having a feed. She is unaware.
She's engrossed in conversation.
Look at this. She's even shuffling back, giving him the cold shoulder. She's moving closer, weirdly. Don't know if she knows. He knows. Oh, there he is. It's the PM. Look at that. It's Glasgow all over again.
She's visually impaired. Oh, they apologised on Twitter. Haven't still done it on television. And as I told you last night, the media has already decided what's happening at the next election. I talk about this at the start of each show because I like to tell you what is being done before our very eyes. And last night, of course, the chief arbiter of what is okay and not gave his usual 15-minute response to the week in Twitter, but he too sort of spoke to the idea that the media, well, they've already made their decision.
Commentators' disillusion with Morrison is one big reason the coalition is trailing Labor in today's news poll by 6 points on the two-party preferred. The big question is, can ScoMo and his image makers win again if commentators and reporters turn against him? We're making no predictions, except to say that Morrison's cuddly footy dad won't get such an easy ride from the media this time around.
So why do I say the Labor Party is falling into the same trap they did a couple of years ago, thinking that this thing is in the bag? Well, because now they are turning to their favourite sources of inspiration for the burn of the day, which today came from the bloke who was in that rather ridiculous photo that, to be honest, I think we should somehow frame and have in the set behind us as a reminder about just how smug they could actually be. Now, of course, Labor will win an election at some point. It might be the next one or the one after that. Who knows? It's up to you. But Jim Chalmers thinks that everyone's already made their decision. I mean, after all, the media have told him that it doesn't matter that the lady was visually impaired. It doesn't matter that it's Media Watch who tells you that the media have changed their mind. The polls are somehow magically right this time as opposed to last time, that this is what the alternative treasurer said about the current Prime Minister.
The liar from the Shire is at it once again.
Huzzah. Now, this particular line, well, where did it come from? Of course, most recently it got a run in the satirical websites. Before that, of course, it bubbled up on, you guess it, Twitter, where all the great talking points that normal Australians certainly come from. The only problem is that while there is an inconvenient truth here, both for the media and for Jim Chalmers, that Australians don't hate the Prime Minister. Some might, absolutely. Because you see, according to the very same polls that say the Labor Party is slam dunk, guaranteed to be the next election, the current Prime Minister is the preferred Prime Minister, and by some margin. Oh, and in the lefty-leaning opinion polls that they put out in the Turnbull Times, Albo is running level with don't know. So good luck trying to pretend that, well, apparently, everyone is absolutely dead set. They've already decided, flush this mob, this bloke is gone. So now we can start saying things like liar from the Shire. Reminds you a little bit of the hubris when they thought that the Prime Minister previously was done in 2019, where we could giggle about the fact that he was a Christian. Of course, the reality could be very different, as I predict it will be in the upcoming election. Now, Labor this far out think that they've already got it in the bag, just like last time. But I've got a feeling that just like we said last time, nothing is inevitable. Now, the polls might magically be right this time. People may have made a decision But I think that nothing is inevitable. Be it your team winning or your team losing, nothing is inevitable. And part of that reality is that for Australians, they can see the alternative government for what it is, which is playing some pretty smart politics at the moment, but not really copping any actual pressure about how they would change your life should they actually become the government next year. For example, here's Each Way Albo blowing up because the government isn't doing enough when it comes to climate change and the 2030 reduction targets.
Australia's report card is a definite fail. And that's why the conference has agreed that countries like Australia that refuse to increase their 2030 target have to return to the next conference in 2022 with a higher target. The government itself is saying that it will achieve that amount by doing nothing, and they have no plan for 2030 outlined.
Now, don't get me wrong, the suits look good. He's starting to look like the alternative Prime Minister. Of course, the current Prime Minister is, of course, campaigning his backside off at the moment. No doubt about it. Remember, the Labor Party thought that they had already measured the curtains in the office, while the current bloke was, of course, working his backside off and ended up surprising them in 2019. But more importantly, what does it tell you about the media that they never follow up on what the Labor Party's position is when it comes to a climate target, not in 2050, but in 2030? I bang on about this every day because it's the whole game. For all of the things that were rejected by the Australian people was Labor's 2030 target at the last election. It's why Albo got rid of their current 2030 target. That put simply, the Labor Party does not have one. Which means, of course, they have three options. They can do exactly what the government does. They can underperform what the government is currently doing. Or, of course, they could promise way more. Just like the 45% that they thought was good enough last time. Now, every percentage between where the government is and where Labor's going to land is a change to your life. And it is a political lifeline to the government. That's exactly a point Barnaby Joyce will make later in the show. Yet the media, of course, well, they won't report this, will they?
Your target is higher than ours, which of course means how are you going to get there? What are you going to do? Does it involve methanes? Does it involve fugitive emissions? Does it involve bovine ruminants, cattle? Do we have to start looking at the number of cattle we've got to meet your target? Does it require a price on carbon? Are you coming at that? And if they keep on saying, no, it's none of those, well, what is it? Where's the magic?
That's the point. Now, if the Labor Party was so certain of its victory, so certain that it could get away with things like liar from the Shire, so certain that Australia had changed its mind, they'd tell you. But there's a reason they're not. And I wonder what that might be.